Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us in our live stream today from the Florida School of Massage community. My name is Kristen Toth, and I am here today with Gil Hedley. Gil, hi, Gil.
Hi.
Gil, for the past 25 years, has been leading curious people like you and me in exploring and appreciating the wonder of our anatomy through layer by layer hands-on human dissection, as well as through lecture presentations and online courses and even poetry. He's been one of my most dear and inspiring teachers that I've had the great good fortune to learn from and work with for my more recent years as a massage therapist. And I'm honestly always super delighted to be able to share his work with more people and practitioners of all different backgrounds. It was, sorry, my brain went somewhere else for a second. Gil has actually joined us here at the school in Florida before, a few times before in the past to lecture, but today he's not in Florida with us. He is coming to us from Colorado Springs, Colorado, where he is at the Institute for Anatomical Research, and that's where his work is currently based. And so before we get into conversation with Gil, I want to acknowledge that there are probably some people on the stream who may not be familiar with our school. So if this is your first introduction to us, then welcome. Yes, we are a massage school, and yet we're not only an ongoing resource for bodywork and massage education, but we're also a community that really promotes and fosters personal and interpersonal exploration through touch and awareness and communication. So it was really my initial training here in 2003, and then also definitely my teaching here since 2011 that I think primed me in the best possible way for the depth and the richness of the inner exploration that Gil leads people through in his work of integral anatomy. So to have him here today feels like a really perfect fit to me. Also because with the mission and the philosophy of our school. But regardless of what's bringing you here to join us, I hope that you find our conversation interesting and meaningful to you. So we're going to have about an hour to talk with Gil, and we'll leave the last 10 or 15 minutes or so to answer some of your comments and questions. So if you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, you can type comments or questions into the chat as we go along. Sarah Thompson and Chrissy Martinez are helping us out behind the scenes today, and they're going to be moderating the chat. They're also the ones who are making sure that all of the tech is in place to pull off this live stream in the first place. So big thanks to both of them as we launch in. So Gil, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to be here. I know you've got a lot going on, so we definitely appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I want to start by sharing something that I remember from the last time that I was in lab with you in class. There was another participant who was asking you a question, and they were asking you a question specifically because they wanted to hear your perspective as an anatomist. And I don't remember the details of the question, and I don't remember the rest of your answer, but I remember how you began your response. And you began your response by saying to them, well, I'm really more of a philosopher than an anatomist. And when you said that, that statement to me encapsulated so well the way that your approach to the body and to dissection so beautifully differs from traditional instruction about both of those things, about dissection and the body. And I realize that you may have just been stating a literal fact, right? Because your PhD is in theological ethics and it's not in anatomy. But nonetheless, I'm wondering if you could say more about that, because I think it might give people a better feel for.
As you mentioned, I don't remember that exchange, but it sounds like something I was teaching anatomy or studying anatomy actually is a philosopher. They just don't know that they're a philosopher, and they might not be conscious of the philosophy that they bring to the table. I like to think that I work hard to be conscious of the philosophy that I bring to the table, so that I know the lens through which I'm witnessing what's in front of me. Because if you don't know that you have rose-colored glasses on, you're going to think that's the world. And if you don't know that you're a mechanist and you just think the body's a machine and aren't conscious that you have a philosophy, a mechanistic philosophy, you'll see certain things in the body and miss a whole lot. One that's looking to witness and perceive the whole, then the parsing out of the body that is anatomists are wont to do, right? The making into pieces and things and bits, anatomizing, right? Turning into atoms, that process becomes something else, as opposed to bringing myself together. I'd be tearing myself apart, and well, there's been enough of that. so for me, it's a chance to, in a conscious pursuit of connection, to witness that there and possibly experience that beyond that moment.
Yeah, beautiful. You said something in there about to the extent that if all you were focused on was the bits and the pieces, that you wouldn't be putting yourself together, that you'd be taking yourself apart. And I think a lot of people's concept of dissection to begin with is that we're taking the body apart piece by piece and bit by bit, right? And one thing that I've directly experienced, and I think most people who take labs with you directly experience, is that in the process of the physical task of literally, we are taking the body apart tissue by tissue, layer by layer. There's something about the way that you lead people through that process that allows us to find our wholeness and completeness. Can you say more about that, either what that has been like for you, or how you witness it in others that join you in this exploration?
Sure. Yeah. Well, for me, coming to the lab from the start has been a specific strategy of embodiment. And I think the success that may be had from this approach comes from emphasizing the relationships that you feel when you're taking things apart. And that it's kind of like, just like a photo negative. You could say, here's a picture and then there's the negative, and we've all seen that kind of comparison. And with this, it would be like the photo would be the parts, and the negative that we're actually looking for would be everything that's making them whole, right? So when you pull at something, it pulls easily or with more difficulty. And when you try and get it apart with your hands and it doesn't happen, so you have to bring out a hemostat, or you have to bring out a scalpel, and you sort of escalate the instrument with which you're dissecting. Each time you escalate, you're witnessing the intensity of the relationship of those tissues, right? It's like, oh, this is really together, so I have to really work to get it apart, or I have to use something really sharp because it's very fibrously bound. And as you experience those relationships, rather than just concluding to the parts, right? As you experience the relationships through the practice of dissection, and also as you do so, I'm always saying, I love words. Words are great, and kind of put them in your back pocket for a minute and allow yourself to experience those relationships as a felt happening that's uploaded into your nervous system. Then the process of feeling connections, not so much thinking about them, although we have all of our excitement and that's wonderful, but
sure.
But you almost can't get away from it, even if you try to escape the connecting process. And so you think, oh, you're prattling on about this and that, and then you step away from the table and the world looks a little different, you feel a little different, you're not really sure why. And there's also, I find, when you de-emphasize the language and emphasize the continuities, the relationships, the colors, the shapes, that those are things perceived more with the heart, with peripheral vision, than the kind of reductionist mentality that can be what people think anatomy is, where it's like naming parts, and it's a very cerebral, neocortical process, as opposed to a more heart-centered process. And I feel like when you're engaged at that level of sort of taking in things peripherally, noticing colors, shapes, and textures, that actually brings you into a kind of a heart space and a heart style of perception that when you step away from the table, it's like, oh, I've been sitting in my heart in the present moment for a couple hours at this table. And it's an in and out thing. It's not like any of us are so skilled at maintaining constant presence and coherence, but you get the sniff of it when you're given these tasks, and then that has a way of happening throughout the room, and then creating community, and then extending past the experience of the lab itself into life in general.
Yeah, it sure does. I concur with you on all of that, from having, like I said, experienced exactly what you're describing directly. And as you're describing all of that, it brings to mind how this exploration that we're talking about is really so relevant and applicable to so many people, right? A lot of people who I've told in passing about your courses or about the what I've learned from you have, I think, had this idea that, oh, dissection is for medical professionals, it's for health practitioners, it's for people who are trained maybe to work with the body, although there are some people who would even disagree about that, right? But really, the way that you lead this exploration and what you hold space for is applicable to anyone who has a body, right? Anybody who has a body, anybody who is interested in being more embodied to whatever degree. I think there's something here for them. And even if I think about all the different people who have shown up when I've taken class with you, there haven't just been PTs and OTs and massage therapists and yoga and Pilates people. There's been artists and writers and financial analysts. And I'm sure I know you could add to that list a mile long, right? Are you thinking of someone in particular?
I'm thinking of a lady who was an administrator at the Canadian Horse Racing Association, and a fellow who was an electrical engineer. I have had some trapeze artists in the class. Yeah, all kinds of folks.
All kinds of folks. Well, we probably have a variety of people listening in today, and we definitely have a lot of people watching who are massage therapists, since it's our massage school that's hosting this. And I would bet that not all of those people know that you used to be a massage therapist and that you used to be a body worker way back when, and that was one of the avenues that got you diving deeper into the body. So I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about your background as a manual therapist, and also how being in lab doing dissection changed for you how you related to the body as a practitioner.
Mm. Well, it kind of, for me, I was in school for a long time, and undergrad, master's, PhD. And somewhere along the line there, I noticed I was about as disembodied as you could get and started doing Tai Chi. And in my Tai Chi classes, which I did practice for many years, we had kind of acupressure massage. And that was kind of my first, you know, hands-on thing. And I'd go home at Christmas and people would be like lining up family parties for me to massage them. So they're like, you're good at that. And I knew I didn't want to be a professor, so I needed to do something else. And my mom got Rolfed, and when I put my hands on her, after having worked with her for many years, she always felt like a 2x4, and she was so supple. And I was like, what happened to you? She's like, I got Rolfed. And I was like, wow, that's cool. So I looked into Rolfing, went to the Rolf Institute, trained as a massage therapist, certified as a Rolfer, and practiced that for several years. And so that got me going. And really, my pursuit of dissection at that time was to improve my professional abilities as a Rolfer, because I felt I'm noodling around here very deeply in people. And frankly, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know the anatomy. I should learn some anatomy. So I got myself into a lab with my Ph.D. Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I really want a cadaver. And they're like, whoa, okay. So actually, the guy was like, come to my office, and he's checked me out. He was a wonderful man and became my dear friend.
And just so people know, it's not usually that easy, right?
It helps if you're Dr. Hedley, because at least they'll answer your phone call out of medical school. So I did play the doctor card.
Yeah.
But not a medical doctor by any means. And so for me, when I started doing the dissection, it was profoundly informative to my hands-on work. As you know, so many people are like, why would you do that? You're not a doctor. It's like, actually, to learn pharmaceutical applications, you don't really need to know that much about physical body, and most of you have never been touched by a doctor in your lifetime. It's left their profession, and actually and because of that, we have an opportunity for touch professions to rise up in service. As I was participating in that, and it gave me two things. One, confidence, because I could see what I was touching in my mind while I was touching it. It's like I had X-ray eyes as a practitioner. Mm-hmm. Number one, so it gave me confidence, and it gave me respect for the body, because if you can't see what you're doing, you have false confidence, and you're noodling around and you're squadging people's nerves and arteries and stuff, and you're over stressing tissues that may be compensations for things that people need, and basically you have this kind of false confidence that can be harmful, actually. So like my neck work changed completely. I dissected the neck many times, and I was like, whoa, I know what I'm touching. I know what's here, and I know those jibbly bits. I got to watch out for them. I know those nerves. I know those special sensitive areas, and I'm not going to go mashing on that. But I can actually be very specific in my touch, because I know that I'm doing no harm when I know what I'm doing. Yeah. So it's like, it's both. In other words, I had more respect for what I now knew was there, and I had more confidence as opposed to false confidence. You know where to back off, where to be, where you can be more firm. And to of course, you should always be listening to your clients, both by the ear and also witnessing all the signs that might be saying you're not doing something good here. or you're doing something really good here. Either way, but your capacity to move in there is very, very different for me. So that was a big help, and also the striking recognition that everyone's different, that each person's anatomy is utterly unique, and that the books are not describing the person on your table. The books are describing nobody.
Yeah.
And the body on your table, that person, that whole person there, not just their body, the whole person, is requiring your specific presence and attention, unique to their needs and the relationship that you create with them, and that you can't do the one-size-fits-all thing and expect to be of service in a really profound way.
Right. That reminds me of how I've heard you say so many times, in different ways and with different words, but that perfect anatomy is the anatomy in your body, essentially, right? Like,
that's right.
That people, when they're talking about their bodies or their clients' bodies, or they're talking about what they're seeing on the dissection table, and they see what appear to be like anomalies or variations, and or rather, I should say, when they see something that appears to be wrong, right? Compared to the pictures that they saw in a textbook that are illustrative of literally no body, as you said, that just to come back to that recognition of like, no, this is anatomy right here in front of us. It's not a deviation from the norm. This is the norm for this body and this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's to me one of the most framing characteristics of an integral approach, is starting with what's in front of you, and recognizing it to be a 100% perfect human anatomy. Because when you do take 1,000 bodies and average them and then make a drawing, not one of those 1,000 people are represented by that drawing. Not one.
Yeah.
And so if we really want to know anatomy, we have to be present to what's in front of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I really love hearing about how lab work over the years has, changed your relationship to working with a body. Mm-hmm. I know it's also changed your relationship to how to your own body, right? To how you relate, to how you see your body, how you treat your own body. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, because you've continued to be a human much longer than you continued to be a Rolfer, right? Like Rolfing for you ended a while ago, but you've still continued to live in this human body. So how has it changed how you relate to the body that you live in, and what kind of things are you doing now to care for your body?
I wish I could say I'm the shining example of my own philosophy. Fortunately, people much more competent to the task of kind relationship to their body listen to me. But I started out, before I was into this at all, with a very negative relationship to my body. My body was just a source of pain and anxiety. And for various physical problems that I've had, I sort of was very experienced with pain. And so my very initial interest in anatomy was to try and find out what was wrong with me. Maybe I could fix it. Maybe someone else could fix it if I told them what was wrong with me. And maybe if I could dig out the little piece that I had broken or ripped in there somewhere, then I could fix it. But I can remember the very first time I had a friend in med school kind of heave his cadaver up into a sitting position, had been supine, because I wanted to see the like the rotatories or something. He's like, okay, and he goes, boom, and he punches this poor little old guy sitting there. And I'm looking at this very heavily dissected back far into the medical school semester and realized, oh, that's not my problem. Like, no, it goes deeper than that. And so, that we can't imagine that. I mean, improving your relationship with your bodies or improving your relationship with yourself, so that the self that is expressing in the body isn't so conflicted and tormented that the body would be having to express that, right? So the more peace, that you kind of can rest into, the body, transforms for that. That having been said, you can't automatically make that correlation, sadly, because some very peaceful people on this planet who've come and gone have suffered in their bodies, And so knowing a lot about anatomy doesn't necessarily take your pain away. And my pain has just morphed into other forms of pain over the years. But I'm not so as emotionally ruined by it as I used to be. So now it's like, oh, okay, well, this is life in a body. It's a mixed bag, but it's no longer just pain. And that has probably been the biggest learning arc over my own embodiment process, has been, I don't, like, pain is not salvific, pain is not honorable in itself necessarily, but it does come with the territory of planetary existence, and so does pleasure. And so I can actually step in that direction even while I'm still in pain, and notice what's good and feel what's good. Because even if some pain is in your body, there's also some pleasure. You can we all do it. You bang your knee and you put your hands on it, right? And you mix the signals to your nervous system. You add and so change what you're experiencing. So it's, knowing more about anatomy really hasn't changed that part, but my appreciation and respect for my body has grown tremendously.
Right.
So that I can be like, oh, this is an honorable existence, being a human in flesh, as opposed to being some shameful curse that was placed upon me due to past karma that sent me back for another round of punishment. So
yeah, exactly. So it's not like learning more things and accumulating more knowledge in the years that you've been working. That's not what has brought you peace,
right?
Or that's not what opened up for you the portal of the human experience of pleasure, right? It was the presence of being there and being in with the body and letting the body on the table, letting the form on the table teach you about you and about existing. Yeah.
I always, on that first day, it's like, we can find weird things here, but there's a lot of health on the table.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can appreciate all the health on the table, because it's like, I love to remember that even on the day you die, there are trillions of successful cellular operations happening to the very last breath.
Yeah.
We can witness that.
Right. Well, I want to change direction just a little bit from what we've been talking about to, you can change direction as well. Yep. Excellent. Just to bring more of the current context of what's happening in the world into our conversation, particularly the pandemic, COVID, because that's something that's been affecting all of us in different ways, and has forced a lot of us who are accustomed to working with people closely in person to adapt to new circumstances and to get innovative with the way we do what we do. And I'm wondering what you think the body and the dissection process has to teach us about being adaptive and flexible and changing course, and also to hear some about how you've adapted and innovated this year in your own work.
Well, the reason why we're virally covering this planet is because of our extreme adaptability.
Yeah.
You know, we pivot our conversations or our experiences very quickly. Just living in Colorado, my body is changing, you know, from Florida, right? My blood is welcoming crisp air in a way that it hasn't in many years. I'm like an alligator. I'm so used to the heat. So I can only confirm that our body is adaptive, and everything I witness on the table is a testament to that adaptability, as such vastly different lives are expressed within us. Our textures change. Our bodies will change in response to this. I don't personally think it's a great thing to be isolated, and my adaptation to the circumstances I'm actually more social than I've ever been in my life. If I were in Florida, I'd be like a monk alone, and here I am living in a community house where all the people, assistants and such come and go, and we're all together, and we come up here to the lab together, and we go home together, and we eat together, and we laugh together around the table, and it's been really wonderful. So I kind of did opposite day on the pandemic and went for working harder than I've ever worked in my life with a wonderful group of people who are constantly changing, and with respect to whom I have no fear.
Well, at the same time, you've also, like, you've been working intensely in lab with a small team of varying people over the months, right? And you've also opened lab up to people in a really new way.
It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful
for you this year. So
say
something about that.
Well, first things first, everybody just dropped out of my classes for the year. Because everyone I teach was suddenly unemployed, and my class is a fairly big ticket item. So, you know, I had a full roster, fully scheduled, like classes maxed out and waitlisted, and then I went down to, is anyone going to come, and do you all want your money back? Oh my Lord! So I did and adapted quickly, and as you know, we did the live streams from the lab, and I was really not sure that a single soul would come to that either, and many did actually, but also that I could manage to convey the energy and the message and the intention of the in-person experience through that medium, and it turned out it translated beautifully in a most surprising and wonderful way. And maybe it's kind of like the jokes on the pandemic, because it reminds me of like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas or something, where, you know, he stuffs the tree up the chimbley and piles all his poor little dog dragging the sled, and then they just come out and sing Dahu Dores anyway. Like, you just can't take away the human spirit. You can take a good whack at it, you know, but I don't know, again, as a testament to our resilience, at least if we're acknowledging our connection even from a distance, there's an experience to be had there. So thank goodness for that.
And it seems like the feedback from people, that the response that you got from people was really phenomenal, that so many people were so grateful to have that opportunity to get a window into what a dissection particularly a dissection experience with you is like, I know a lot of people who have wanted to get in lab with you for years and haven't been able to for a whole variety of reasons, right? But in talking about increasing like accessibility for this work and for the exploration that you offer, I feel like this is a really beautiful adaptation and innovation.
Win, 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 win.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. Yeah, I'm thrilled by the opportunity. I don't know if it's diminishing returns or something, or if people will still come, or if I could expand the audience beyond, my Facebook page and your Facebook page, right? So that we can, like you say earlier, that I'm trying to speak to everyone with a body, not just folks who touch bodies professionally, although that's kind of an obvious audience.
Right.
But my mom loves to watch this stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's plenty of interest. And it's partly because, as I am convinced, the human body is the ultimate common denominator on the planet that crosses every religious, political, social, familial, cultural, and geographic barrier. And I feel that the fact that that experience could be conveyed, in a live stream is a testament to the fact that our connections are not imaginary.
Yeah.
Our connections are real. And the ways that the human body communicates are transcorporal, are transplanetary, and are universal. And that our shared human experience is the shared human experience of one body, which one body is under the effects of common influences: the sun, the moon, the spinning earth. And the deeper we go into that body, I think our gripes might thin.
And what a better time than now to learn in a deeper way how to be in connection with, how to access that connection with our fellow human being at this time where connections have been disrupted and feel disrupted in so many ways.
Yeah, I've never asked a cadaver who they voted for.
Yeah.
And they've never disappointed me with their answer if they wanted to offer one. Right? So, because their whole form is a mirror to myself, and it would be a very superficial judgment to place a distance between myself and another for matters of misperception. Things that imagine me split from somebody when I can't be split from somebody. It's impossible.
It is. Yeah.
There's just one big boat. The boat of consciousness.
Consciousness, right.
Yeah, the boat of consciousness, and there's no getting out of the boat.
Exactly. Well, I really, really appreciate how our conversation has dove into and also danced around like the larger experience of what you both bring to the table in the lab and to what you contribute to the larger conversation of being embodied and being human, which, like you said, is the common denominator. I also know that the people who know you and tap into you in that way, I think that's a big reason why they kind of tend to hang out with you, right? And come back to lab. And of course, that doesn't discount all of the people that come into lab because like they want to look at muscles, because that's really cool too. And it's all in the boat. It's all part of it. And I had said before that we have a lot of massage therapists on the stream now, and we all know that massage therapists love muscles. Like, let's not kid ourselves, right? You've seen them, I've seen them in lab. Like, get really excited when we get to the muscle layer of the body. And I'm bringing this up just as a last bit before we go to Sarah to check in on any comments or questions. With the work that you've been doing in lab since March, when you weren't doing the live stream, right, and when you weren't doing a few in-person smaller lab courses, you've been really thoroughly, extensively doing some dissection on just a couple forms, right, for your own research. And I was there with you at the beginning of it, and we went through skin and superficial fascia and some of the deep fascia, and that was like a month, right? And then there was the muscle layer, and like 6 months later, you're still on the muscle layer. I mean, at least that was true a few days ago, right? Like, I think you may be done now, but my point is you spent a long time with muscles, yeah.
So much time. So, I don't know what I was thinking when I booked the lab for a month. I'm in the 8th month here now.
Right, and like 7 of those have been with muscles. So as someone who had already seen a lot of muscles in your years,
it turns out they're pretty interesting.
Yeah, like what's new to you now, spending so much time so meticulously with the muscle layer?
Well, they're cute little buggers. And Musculus is like a little mouse, right? Isn't that adorable? So, you know, I'm always teasing about the origins and insertions, simplification, and the flashcard muscle anatomy, because I'm very conscious that the tissue that we call muscle is in relationship to tissues over 100% of its surface, and that all of those surfaces have mechanical and physiological properties. And so to say what's the origin and insertion, I find to be kind of a disappointing simplification of these amazing tissues. And so I like to ask the question, not what's the origin and insertion, but what's the quality of the relationship in a given geographical point on any given tissue, so that we can work on the actual tissue and relationships rather than the idea that we have in our head about them from those more simple reference points. So what I've observed is that for every named muscle tissue, there are a whole handful of potential types of qualities of relationship that can be expressed there. So we can have, for instance, muscle fibers that go directly to bone. No transition, like meat to bone. And then we can have muscle fibers that sort of peter out, and then the fascia continues in, say, like a root on the bone. And we call those tendons. And then you can have muscle fibers that peter out rather than to a root, they peter out into a plane. And we have like an aponeurosis that then may continue into another aponeurosis that may wrap into other muscle fibers that may then eventually find their way, into a final aponeurosis. I'm thinking of the, say, transversus abdominis, where you have this beautiful silvery aponeurosis in the back, and then you have these muscle fibers arcing over the belly wall and then terminating into another giant aponeurosis. That's kind of cool. And then along the way, there's some of them are rooting directly to the ribs, and some of those fibers are rooting directly to the bone. So we express with multiple kinds of relationships, those muscle fibers, and then they're covered in a fascia on the deep side, the transversalis fascia, which can be kind of fibrous, and then on the top side they're covered in like a membrane that's in relationship to the internal oblique, which is having a membrane. And then we have a membranous relationship. So you can look at a muscle tissue and see that it's having a slippery membranous relationship where there's differential movement with something, and somewhere else it's having mechanical leverage over a bone or over an aponeurosis or over a tendon. And then sometimes that membrane, when it's at its extent, at its most dramatic movement potential, then it locks out, and it also becomes a place of leverage, so that there's mechanics, force mechanics of even the membranes. And then every single one of these named muscle tissues also has a visceral root, a belly. Some of them have what appear to be like dramatic mesentery.
And can you clarify for some, because I know what you are referring to when you say a visceral root, but what is the viscera that you're talking about in the root?
I'm talking about, well, we know the main viscera, we call them organs, right? Viscus is organ, viscera, organs plural. So in our head or in our chest or in our belly and our pelvis, we have the famous viscera, the guts. Mm-hmm. And yet those guts aren't locked in there. They're reaching out. The heart and the brain are non-local to the head and the chest. They just keep going. They're offended by regional anatomy. They cross all the regions and all the boundaries and all the layers and interpenetrate everything. And every named muscle is the muscle of the heart and the muscle of the brain, which send their branches through those muscle tissues in a fractal embrace. And you can follow those wee little branches into larger branches, into bigger branches, until you find that maybe 1 or 2 or 5, main roots. And when you identify where that is on a given muscle tissue, not just know the words, but it's like, oh, I know where the root of that muscle is, as like a flower on a great blossoming tree. Yeah. And that you can touch it there and be in communication with the heart and be in communication with the brain in a way that's different if you're just kind of mashing around in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Which mashing I love, don't get me wrong.
Wonderful.
So muscles are fancy, and I've reveled in appreciating their interconnectedness to everything else, as opposed to the singularity that we imagine them to be when we study them on a flashcard.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing more about that. I want to go ahead and check in with Sarah and see if there are any questions that we have from people that have been watching that you might be able to address in our last few minutes. So Sarah, are you there?
I am. I think there's probably more than we can cover in the last few minutes, but I'll start with one and see how far we go. Caroline is asking, can you talk about the relationship between the appearance of a cadaver, like what does the tissue look like in a cadaver versus in a living person? She wants to know, is it stiff and hard? Is it rehydrated in the lab? What's that like for you?
Yeah, that's fun. It's a constant process of translation from what we see on the table to the living because it's not the same thing. Cadavers are dramatically still. That's their drama. They don't breathe, they just lie there. So they lack movement. I call them models, in fact, because of their all that's been drawn away from them. Their texture has changed. A cadaver is an embalmed dead human body. I work with cadavers. I also work with, I call those fixed. I also work with unfixed bodies, which are a lot wetter and jigglier. I shouldn't say wetter because an embalmed body has got like 4 extra gallons of embalming fluid in it, so it's more wet than any of us are, and yet that liquid is a desiccant, so it's actually kind of chemically cooking the tissues, so they are more firm. They hold their shape. That's the good news. They actually hold their shape, which is the cool part about the fixed body. And because the unfixed body does not hold its shape, it's kind of like hanging there like sacks of water. In other words, the body is so fluid in terms of its texture that it's almost hard to get a grip on it. So, and then we look at the people standing around the table and we're like, well, that's different. That's different. And so it's a constant process while you dissect to say, okay, this is cool. I'm noticing this relationship. I'm noticing this texture. How does that relate to what's on my body? And can I cross-reference my living tissue with this dead, fixed stuff here? Can I cross-reference the textural relationship that I'm feeling between two things to what I can feel in my body? And it turns out you can. You can index it very accurately. So it's not like you're lost in there because this one's dead and this one's living, or this one's fixed and this one's unfixed. You just got to pay attention, and you can't ever forget or consider as a permanent reference what's in front of you right there, because the next one is different anyway. All you can do is assemble an aggregation of knowledge and then take seriously what's in front of you, whether living or dead.
Thank you. That sounds really helpful to that question. I'll just go.
I'm not good with short answers.
I love that. I think it makes so much sense in terms of embodied learning, what you're saying. We'll go to one more. Someone is asking if you've ever come across much scar adhesions in your dissections, and what sort of properties have you experienced with them?
Lots and lots and lots and lots of them, actually. We endure the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune in our bodies. and sometimes I think that the donors gave us their bodies just so we could check that out. And the textures vary dramatically when it comes to adhesions. Some are insignificant, really. When I look at them, I'm like, they didn't know it, and it didn't bother them. Very light connection that doesn't put something out of anatomical position, or that doesn't so dramatically limit movement. And then there are dramatic intrusions onto the body that people experience where things get stuck and matted in the viscera, where it's like, ooh, that wasn't going anywhere. And there's no amount of touch that was going to change that particularly. And then the question is, how can you help a person be more fluid in their compensations relative to something that's stuck for good? But they can be very fibrous. They can have nerves and veins and arteries going through them, because it's alive. The tissue's alive, And then there are the kind of inventions that the body creates to contain the inventions that we put in. whether they be pacemakers or breast implants or metal rods and bolts and screws and all these kind of things, when the body will generate fabric, biological fabric, to encapsulate these, foreign objects in a way that the immune system can be okay with, because no amount of T cells are going to take out a hip replacement, but we can encapsulate, say, a pacemaker in a way that the body becomes okay with that thing being there. It's really amazing, the creativity of our human responsiveness to injuries. And I'm a lover of scars because they keep us alive. So I have an attitude towards scars which is very positive. If we didn't have the capacity to scar, we'd be dead. So we got to be thankful for our body's innate healing capacity that generates scars. And then when they become limitations, then we can play with that and see if we can't become more pliable in our relationship to those recovery processes.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love how you frame that. I just want to let you know that people are really interested in how to find out more about taking your classes.
That's what I was going to ask the next thing. Yeah, so where can you
I gotta put my new schedule up. I have a lot of online stuff now, which I'm happy that I have online stuff for folks who can't travel, and it's also a hell of a lot cheaper than taking my lab classes. I will have my lab schedule out within this month. It's very late this year because I've been doing these other projects. I have it, it's already written, and I just need to do the website backend stuff. So www.gilhedley.com is where anything about me can be found. I also have a Facebook community page. They make you have a personal page. I just double post, so I have filled up that one. And so if you have the community page, Gil Hedley Integral Anatomy, I announce things there, and I also post friendly thoughts occasionally.
Yeah. And when I just want to draw to people's attention that if they sign up for your newsletter or if they sign up on your website, then that gives them basically a free account to get access to a whole lot of content for free. Aside, in addition to things, CE courses that they can take online and pay for and that sort of thing. But it's well worth it to visit his site because there's a huge amount of resources there.
And please do check the tiny little box that says you don't mind hearing from me occasionally. It really is occasionally.
Yeah.
You'll hear occasionally from Kristen as well, because she knows how to get in there and send stuff. Excuse me. And
on YouTube, if people are interested in the videos that you periodically put out, right, then your channel is Somanaut, Somanaut. Yeah, great. Those are all great places. So thanks for that information. And also, I'll throw in there that for those of you who are watching and would like to learn more about our school, the Florida School of Massage, then you can go to our website at floridaschoolofmassage.com. You can sign up for our newsletter, and you can also even set up an appointment for a call with a member of our admissions team if you think you might be interested in joining our next new class. And if you've enjoyed being with us today and listening to this conversation, and you're joining us on YouTube, then please go ahead and like the video and subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button below. That'll help other people find this conversation with Gil and myself. You can also hit the notification button if you want to get reminders of when we go live next. If you're on Facebook, you can like this video and share it with your friends and follow us there. And I just want to thank everyone out there who's been with us today and taken time out of their day to share the conversation that we've had. And also mostly thank you, Gil, so much for your for your time and your thoughts and for all of the work that you do. I'm very grateful.
Pleasure. I appreciate your appreciation.
Thanks, Gil. All right, everyone. Thank you again. Take care and stay safe. And bye for now.
Bye.